6 years old, so when they asked me to do this evening, I jumped at the chance, and they said, you'll need 45 minutes or so worth of questions for William. And I said, that's no problem. I've got 45 years worth of questions built up. William Shatner, of course, played James T. Kirk in Star Trek, the most iconic and popular science fiction show in television history. But that's just a small part of what has been an extraordinary career.
Yeah.
And now, ladies and gentlemen,
our host, William Shatner.
Idiot, you used my real name.
Hooker, just tell me what you want, huh?
I want to close you down, Irving. You're gonna have to do your own dirty work now. Do you hear me? Bloodsucker. Don't worry about me.
White shirt, now red, when you're sleeping, you'll run your titties.
There's a man out there. What? What happens to us after we die?
So you're a tough guy, like you do you rough guy. Just ain't good enough guy, just always so puff.
Mr. Crane, we do not allow firearms in the courtroom.
Such a rough judge, not loaded.
You must be the new kid.
I'm a master of disguise.
As am I.
As am I.
As am I. That's the stupidest thing I ever heard.
Danny Crane. Danny Crane.
You got on this case specifically because I'm I did.
Believe me.
I do.
I love you.
Debbie.
My doctor.
Is this any way to greet your supreme leader? Can I call you Captain?
No.
Please? Save yourself.
I'm fluent in 37 languages.
Fellas, it looks like we're facing a knockout.
I think this is the greatest day of my entire life.
Sorry, buddy. One day you'll meet a girl. Looked out the window, and I saw something going the flame.
Calm me down. They gave me something called alcohol.
I run a charity horse show called the Priceline.com Hollywood Charity Horse Show. I've seen miracles happen with children and with veterans who've had ills of one kind or another that have been made better, if not well, by being on a horse.
I watch your tail. You watch mine. I love this planet already.
Ladies and gentlemen, the guy that I consider the most interesting man in the galaxy, the great William Shatner.
Because it's embarrassing. No, but it really is. I mean, this film was made 35 years ago, and then I come out, you know? I mean, it's embarrassing. I know. But there's people listening. Be quiet. I went to buy my ticket to come to Dallas, and I handed the guy my credit card, and he looked at it, and then he looked at me, and he said, "Is that you?" I went, and he says, "Oh my God, how time flies." It's true. I mean, it's embarrassing, come out like that. And you know what I'd like to do is, first of all, before we ask the questions, just put this film in its proper perspective, okay? Because this film was important. It begat the rest of Star Trek. We did the Star Trek the movie, large motion picture. So Star Wars happened, and then in my imagination, here's what happened afterwards. So Star Wars happens, and it's making a lot of money, and the executives in at Paramount get really upset, and they say, Star Wars is making a lot of money. What have we got that we could do as well? And I figure a coffee boy was handing out the coffee. And he said, well, remember that show several years ago called Star Trek? And the guys, oh yeah, let's make a big Star Trek. So I think that's what happened. And then they went. They said, let's get an A-list director. So they went to Robert Wise, and Robert Wise, the famous director who had just finished West Side Story and that kind of thing. So this I know to be true. He went home to his wife, Millie. He said, Millie, these people from this show called Star Trek want me to direct their film. And I'm just like it was downtown, He just walked by like, what the hell? It's good though, sense of independence. So Millie Wise, and Bob says, I don't think I'll do it. And Millie says, are you crazy? Star Trek is wonderful, I love Star Trek. You've got to direct it. So he says, okay, I'll direct it. So then he directs the film. Now, Robert Wise was a great editor as well as director. He had edited for Orson Welles in Orson Welles' famous movie,
Citizen Kane.
Citizen Kane. Craig, you're with us. For Citizen Kane, arguably the best motion picture ever made. So he had edited that film. And so he was a great editor. But in directing this film, everything went wrong. The script was late, and then the special effects were late as well, because back then, 35 years ago, 40 years ago, the computer effects were just beginning. They were very primitive compared to today. So the guys on special effects took longer than expected, and Robert Wise never had a chance to really edit the film the way he would have liked to. So we're all, the cast and crew are all in Washington, D.C., waiting for the debut, and the film just arrives in time to play for the debut. So it's not perfect. And as a result, maybe, the film did all right, but didn't do spectacularly, didn't do like Star Wars. So the management, and this I know to be true, of Paramount said, the head guy, I've forgotten his name, went home and he said to his wife, all right, we've done this movie, Star Trek, it didn't do so well, I'm not gonna make any more Star Trek. And his wife said, are you crazy? I love Star Trek. Star Trek was my favorite. You got to do another movie. So he gives the ability to make one more movie of Star Trek to the television department, to make it at low cost, which the television department did. This is the movie. This movie begat, because of its success, begat all the other iterations of Star Trek. So you could say that the Me Too movement begat Star Trek. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. How are you, Craig?
Great.
It's wonderful to see you. You must know his name from being on radio for so many years, sports department, and a lot about the Cowboys. The Cowboys.
Yeah, you're a football fan. You
I
host
am a
your
football
famous
fan.
parties.
And when you say the Cowboys, you have to say the same thing about the Los Angeles team. The Rams. The Cowboys and the Rams didn't do so well. It's terrible.
It is around here. That's a sore
That's a good
spot
light,
for
by the way.
football fans.
Yeah.
This movie, Con, it really holds up. It's an amazing movie. Do you think it's the best of all the Star Trek movies?
No, I think Star Trek 5 was the best. The fact that I directed Star Trek 5 has nothing to do with Yeah, no, this is a really good one. This movie is successful because it went back to what the series really did well, which was to tell a good story that didn't have all the special effects and the running and jumping. But the running and jumping, ironically, turned out to be the answer to this conundrum, which was everybody made a Star Trek movie. I directed one, and they made them with The Next Generation, and all of them grossed about $100 million, which when you make a movie for $30 million, barely breaks even. And they could never break through that ceiling until J.J. Abrams did a lot of running and jumping and special effects, and those movies made a lot of money. So I guess that was the answer to the popularity.
You mentioned Star Wars, and I've always, of course, been on the Star Trek side of things. And one of the arguments I always made was that
You're lucky you said that, because you're among people who hope agree with you.
I always felt like Star Trek was superior because to me it was a deeply written show. It predicted, maybe even inspired so much of the future, like just the devices we use. Star Trek pegged that 40, 50 years ago.
Exactly, and that is the key to science fiction. Science fiction is the imagining of people who think what might happen in the future, and mostly it's grounded in laboratory work where there's theoretical ideas going around, and out of those theoretical ideas stems this this futuristic concept. But that story has to be told in human terms, and if it isn't humanity, then it's just a lot of running and jumping and special effects. So yes, this film and the best of Star Trek told a story that was filled with humanity.
When you go through a sliding door that's automatic, or you pull out a flip phone, do you think of Star Trek?
When I approach a sliding door, I go, whoosh. You know, I mean, I'm joking about that, of course, but there were times. I hate to bring this to you, but it was all pretend. and so I'd come up to a door. No, please, you have to. I'm going into the dark here. I'm going to the dark side. No, that's the other show. The doors were manned by a human being backstage, okay? There was a guy right beside. So here's the door, and there's a guy here, and he's got a little peephole, and he pulls the door open as I would walk in. Now, there were scenes that we did, fight scenes that we would go on a while, and we'd be punching, and the stunt guys would fall to the floor, and the thing went on. The fight scenes would go on so long, every so often you hear, and a stuntman had fallen asleep. It's the truth, and we'd kick the guy. So backstage, this guy would be waiting for the door, for me to come up the stairs to the door open. And for one reason or another, he would go to sleep. Whether he had too much alcohol, whether they were drunk, I don't know. All I know, many times, you couldn't hear him, but he was going, and I'd walk up and hit the door. But when the door would open, with my back to camera, I'd go, psh. It was funny to me at the time.
All of those years doing the television series and then later the movies, did you have a favorite co-star on Star Trek?
Oh yeah. I was in love with the guys in the red shirts. They wouldn't be around. No, I wrote a book about Leonard Nimoy, outlining, thank you, 3 people. Oh, 4 people read the book. Leonard was a dear soul. He was the brother I never had. And we discovered that we had so much in common. We were born 4 days apart. He was born in Boston. I was born in Montreal, not far away. Families basically the same. Came up through the ranks the way we did. Our lives were so similar divorce, death, children. You know, most times a cast gets together. Let me start from the beginning. Laurence Olivier called the audience the monster that had to be fed. When you're on stage, when you're backstage, when the actors are backstage waiting to go on, like I was waiting to go on a famous play that had just been written, a famous author that had written another play. His big play was a hit on Broadway. I was now in his second play with an actress, and the actress and I had to, the thing opened up, we came to the apron, curtain was behind us, and in black, and then what was going to happen was the searchlights, the spotlights were going to hit us, and the curtain opened up. That was the opening. And now we're standing there, and nobody knows we're there because it's dark, and you can hear the audience, the monster going on. They're muttering among themselves, and it sounds like a monster growling. And I've got a hold of her hand, she's got a hold of mine. We're not too sure about this play, and she turns to me and she says to me, whispers, "Are we in a failure?" Thing opens up, Broadway audience. And we were, it closed right away. But that's the monster that has to be fed. So that actors are aware of that when they're dealing. They know that this monster needs to be fed, needs to be entertained, needs to laugh, needs to cry. And how do you do that, whether it's a long-run play or a big movie that extends for a long time or a series? The actors are bonded by this desire to please. It's like being at war with somebody in a foxhole. You're bonded, and you form these great friendships, and you're involved in each other's life. And then the period is over, the play closes, the movie's ended, and you would think James Spader and I spent 5 years together doing Boston River. That was the best. I loved him. He's a great guy. And so the Boston Eagles canceled. Goodbye. I'll call you next week. Oh no, I can't call you next week. I got that dinner, so I'll call you. And I never called him. He never called me for 5 years. We just got in touch with each other a few weeks ago. Strangely, I guess this show is closed or something like that. We're going to see each other when I get back to Los Angeles. But there's that kind of separation. But with Leonard, it never happened that way. We were thrown into each other's company through Comic-Cons and movies and dark nights in limos going somewhere where we'd be talking to each other about divorce and death and children and the troubles. And we became brothers. I loved him so much. So in his death, I've missed this great guy that I spent so many years of my life. But DeForest Kelley. DeForest Kelley was a great Southern gentleman, and I really cared a lot about him. We would shoot sometimes at night, and the evenings, as we all know, working a late shift or staying up late at night, you're more vulnerable at night. You're more liable to reveal things that you wouldn't talk about during the day. So late one night, he was telling me how he feared forgetting. He was, I'm losing my mind, Bill. I can't remember my keys, names, and words are the actor's tools, and I think I'm forgetting. And I would say, no, Dee, don't be ridiculous. Happens to everybody. Don't you worry about that forgetting. You're perfectly fine. I used to hunt with a bow and arrow. Used to hunt. I long ago. Am I having a stroke? Long ago, stopped. I will not eat or kill anything. I don't want to. I mean, even there was a gnat in my car the other day, and I'm driving along and I think, oh, wait a minute, the gnat has a right to live. So I opened the window, the gnat was sucked out, and I don't know what happened to it, but I didn't kill it. So I used to hunt with a bow and arrow. And your eye, you know, the people I hunted with have taught me about archery and hunting and stalking, watching the game, seeing where it's going. Your eye is trained with every characteristic. So I would watch people come in the morning just because I would watch. There was a table. On movie sets, you have a craft service table filled with goodies to eat. Not because they were kind, but because they wanted you full of energy for the day. So I would watch people come in to eat, and DeForest would come in. And I watched DeForest very carefully. He would come in, this southern gentleman, and he'd pick a bagel. You'd think it would be grits or something. Pick a bagel, cut the bagel, put the bagel into the toaster, press the toaster down. And then, you know, you could see his whole body. I'm going to eat a bagel. So you could see him, just the whole sense of the enjoyment of the bagel that was going to spring up. So I watched him one morning doing that. And Leonard was there. I said, Leonard, distract D. So Leonard said, DeForest, I got something in my eye, would you? And he moves over there. I pop the toaster. I take the bagels. I press the toaster back down. I move over this side. DeForest comes back, and he's waiting for the bagel. Thing pops up, and there's no bread. And you can see his whole body go. Son of a bitch. I could have sworn I put a bagel in there. I'm sure he put a bagel. Takes another bagel, he cuts the bagel, he puts it there. Now he's no longer, I'm not going to eat it. You know, he's there. You know, this better pop up and be a bagel. And I call Leonard over. Leonard, distract. Leonard, DeForest, the sting is in my eye. He comes over. I pop. I don't know what to do with it. I shove it in my mouth. DeForest comes back. He's waiting. The thing pops up. There's no bagel. There's no. God, what? And he sees me choking on the bagel. And he was you, Shatner. He stopped talking to me for weeks. I loved him. I loved him a lot.
We asked everybody here to submit some questions, so we're going to try to work a few of these in throughout the evening. This one is from